Conserve your ammo. Only shoot at what you can hit.
I'm gonna scram this very night.
They don't know where we are.
Yeah, they'll find us.
Let's start with the most fun prison escape movie ever made, the one with the jaunty theme music and Steve McQueen on a motorcycle. It's based on a real 1944 breakout from Stalag Luft III, and the real version ends with one of the coldest mass murders of the entire war. Now put yourself in the position of one of the 76 men who got out that night. It's the coldest march that region has seen in 30 years. There's 5 feet of snow on the ground and you can't cross the fields, so you're walking the roads, which means within days you get caught. 73 of the 76 were rounded up inside 2 weeks, and at first getting caught doesn't feel like the end of the world. You're a prisoner of war, there are rules, and an escape attempt cost you a couple of weeks in the cooler. So when the Gestapo puts you in a car and says you're being driven back to camp, you believe them. Somewhere on a quiet stretch of road, the car pulls over. The escorts suggest you step out, relieve yourself, stretch your legs, and while you're standing on the roadside, you're shot in the back. This happened to 50 men. Hitler had wanted all 73 shot, but his generals bargained him down. The bodies were cremated and the urns were delivered back to Stalag. That part was deliberate. The ashes were the message, and it worked. This was the last mass escape of the war because now every prisoner knew the actual price. Number 2 is The Bridge on the River Kwai, which won 7 Oscars. And the men who built the real bridge hated this movie. They called it a slander against their dead. The real project was the Burma Death Railway, 258 miles of track through jungle and solid rock. The workforce was about 60,000 Allied prisoners, plus 200,000 Asian civilians the Japanese simply abducted, men, women, and children. They worked 18-hour shifts, eating rice and rancid meat crawling with maggots. If you collapsed from cholera or dysentery, you got driven back to work at bayonet point. Between the prisoners and the civilians, the railway killed over 100,000 people. And then Hollywood makes the big movie about it, and the whole plot is a proud British colonel willingly building the enemy a perfect bridge, which is fiction. The real commander, Colonel Toosie, spent those years shielding his men, taking their punishments on himself and quietly sabotaging the bridge. He literally had guys collecting termites and feeding them into the timbers. His veterans called him the finest officer they ever served under. The next one is Full Metal Jacket, and it didn't even show the most horrifying part of it all. The entire second half takes place during the Battle of Hue in 1968. And while Kubrick's Marines are busy with the sniper, the largest civilian massacre of the Vietnam War is happening in the houses around them. When communist forces took the city, they came in with prepared blacklists of names. Government workers, teachers, priests, anyone who'd ever worked with the Americans. And for the 25 days they held Hue, squads went door to door, checking people against the lists. At a cathedral across town, about 400 men and boys were sheltering with their families. The cadres took them away, told everyone they were going for re-education. Their family spent the next 22 months not knowing until a creek bed 10 miles away gave up the remains. The mass graves around the city kept surfacing for years. At minimum 2,800 bodies, possibly up to 6,000, which is as much as a tenth of the city. Some shot, some clubbed, and some buried alive. Historians still argue about the exact toll. Black Hawk Down is already a 15-hour nightmare compressed into 2.5, so the real horror here isn't the battle. It's what one photograph of the battle did. The raid they show you in the movie was planned for under an hour and ran more than 15. 18 Americans were killed and somewhere between 700 and 1,500 Somalis. Afterward, crowds dragged the bodies of several American soldiers through the streets, and a photographer caught one of those moments on film. I'm not going to show it here because it's actually super disturbing. Just check out Paul Watson Mogadishu photo. That picture won the Pulitzer Prize, and it became the image of the entire intervention. Within days, Clinton announced full withdrawal from Somalia. And 6 months later, when the genocide started in Rwanda, the reflex in Washington was to remember Mogadishu and stay out. About 800,000 people were killed in 100 days. And it all traces back to that one photograph. Number 5 is The Boat, and here the horror is right in the opening title card. 40,000 men served on German U-boats, and 30,000 of them died. 3 out of 4. No branch of any service in the entire war died at a higher rate. That includes the kamikaze units. So let's talk about what those 30,000 deaths actually looked like, because there were 2 ways it happened. When a U-boat gets caught by destroyers, it escapes by diving below its own rated depth. The engines go quiet, the lights go down, and the crew waits. Imagine just sitting there listening to the hull creak as the ocean squeezes it, knowing that a few meters deeper the steel gives and you're dead. If a depth charge landed close enough, the hull imploded. The whole crew gone in a fraction of a second. And that was the merciful version. The second way was slower. A damaged boat settles onto the bottom intact and the crew suffocates inside it. Slowly, over hours. The air turns to poison bit by bit. The men get dizzier and weaker, and they die gasping in the dark. And worst of all, they know the whole time that there's no way to escape. Rescue Dawn is next, and it ends with a rescue and applause. The real story kept going for another 35 years, and that's where the horror is. So first, here's what Dieter Dingler survived. He was shot down over Laos in 1966, and because he refused to sign a propaganda statement, they tortured him for months. They hung him upside down over an ant nest until he passed out. They put him in a well overnight so that if he fell asleep, he'd drown. They drove bamboo slivers under his fingernails. In the prison camp, the prisoners overheard the guards discussing that it'd be easier to just kill them all than keep feeding them. That's what kicked off the escape. 7 men broke out, just 2 survived. They found Dingler after 23 days in the jungle. He weighed under 100 pounds. The doctor said he was maybe a day from death. The movie ends right there with the rescue, but Dingler's life didn't. For the rest of it, he kept 1,000 pounds of rice, flour, and honey hidden under the floorboards of his California home because he physically could not fall asleep in a house with no food hidden inside it. In 2001, after an ALS diagnosis, he took his own life. He's buried at Arlington. Number 7. Schindler's List. Spielberg didn't exaggerate Amon Göth for this movie. He actually had to tone him down. There was real documented stuff in the script that he ended up cutting because he figured audiences would see it and just refused to believe it actually happened. So here's some of what the record actually holds. Survivors testified that he would not start his breakfast without shooting at least one person. Prisoners were killed for making eye contact with him, for walking too slowly, for serving his soup too hot. The balcony shootings from the movie are real and they're in the trial records, but he also liked to ride up the hill overlooking the camp and shoot prisoners from horseback. He trained his 2 dogs to tear prisoners apart on command. The estimate is that he personally murdered over 500 people before you even count the thousands he ordered killed. The SS did arrest him in the end in 1944, not for any of the killing, for stealing Jewish property that legally belonged to the Reich. Poland hanged him in 1946, and decades later, when Spielberg brought survivors to the set, one of Schindler's actual workers looked at Ralph Fiennes in costume and had a panic attack on the spot. Number 8 is Unbroken, which ends with liberation and a happy title card. Except in reality, the villain won. Here's what Louis Zamperini survived. 47 days on a raft in the Pacific with sharks circling the whole time, then more than 2 years in prison camps where he became the personal fixation of a guard the prisoners called the Bird. Other prisoners described the Bird getting so excited during beatings that he would literally froth at the mouth. After the war, MacArthur put the bird at number 23 on Japan's most wanted war criminals list, so he walked into the mountains and stayed there for 7 years. Even his own mother believed he was dead and built a shrine to his memory. In 1952, a post-occupation amnesty wiped the charges. He came down from the mountains, went into life insurance, and got rich. In his single television interview, he declined to apologize for anything, and in 2003, he died wealthy, free, and unrepentant. Number 9 is The Killing Fields, and this might be the darkest story in this video. The man who won an Oscar for playing a Cambodian genocide survivor didn't have to act because he actually was one. And the genocide may have reached across 20 years and an ocean to finish the job. He was a doctor in Phnom Penh. Delivering babies was his specialty when the Khmer Rouge took the city in 1975. Under Pol Pot, being educated got you killed. So he hid his glasses, hid his French, hid his medical training, and passed himself off as a taxi driver. He got imprisoned and tortured 3 times and stayed alive, partly by eating beetles and scorpions. And then, in 1978, his pregnant wife went into a fatal labor. He knew exactly how to save her. This was literally his job, but doing a C-section would have outed him as a doctor and gotten all 3 of them killed anyway. So he held her while she died. He escaped to Thailand in 1979, ended up in America, got cast in The Killing Fields, and won the Oscar for it. And then, in 1996, he got shot dead next to his car outside his home in LA. And the last one is Come and See. This is the movie people call the most harrowing war film ever made. It ends with a title card. 628 Belarusian villages were burned to the ground together with all their inhabitants. And that's not a metaphor, and it's not rounded up for drama. That's the documented count, and it's the floor, not the ceiling. The movie is built on a real village called Katyn, March 1943. A partisan ambush killed a German officer, so a German unit came to the village to make an example out of it. They herded everyone into a barn, 149 people, 75 of them kids, the youngest 7 weeks old. Then they covered it in straw and set it on fire. The people who broke the doors down and ran out burning got machine-gunned on the spot. 143 people burned alive or got shot that day. Only 6 survived. And that was just one village. Over 5,000 Belarusian settlements got burned in these revenge operations, and 186 of them were never rebuilt. They just don't exist anymore. Roughly 1 out of every 4 Belarusians died in that war.